so we're just gonna focus on the fun cannibal murder. Serve
we're
it to your friends.
Cannibal murder and classism and in the Industrial Revolution. It's gonna be fun.
Yeah.
So why don't we dive in and get it done, since we look so phenomenal.
Absolutely, we do. Yes, you look wonderful. It's honestly very spot on. We did a good job this week.
Yeah, I mean, it's fun when it's, like, so dramatic. It's easy to do these ridiculous art with our face. Because it's hard to not, like, you just look dead, honestly, which is the point. Especially when you get to see Kat a little bit more and how dead she looks, because Sweeney Todd's supposed to look dead.
Yeah, it's, we're dead inside.
He's been through some stuff. So. Yeah. So let me tell you about Sweeney Todd, the film, musical, which was a whole thing in and of itself. The fact that it's a film, and that's what it was advertised as. Anyway, Sweeney Todd, the infamous story of Benjamin Barker, aka Sweeney Todd, who sets up a barber shop in London, which is the basis for a sinister partnership with his fellow tenant, Mrs. Lovett. It's directed by Tim Burton, written by John Logan, who did the screenplay, Hugh Wheeler did the musical, and Christopher Bond, who did the musical adaptation. Yeah. That's what it is. So this film and the many other adaptations are based on a penny dreadful titled The String of Pearls, a Romance, or A Domestic Romance, or The Missing Sailor, or something. Like, there's like 20 names for this. But the one that's well known is A String of Pearls. Sweeney Todd, the Demon Barber of Fleet Street, is just one of many adaptations of this piece of work. Specifically, it was adapted from Stephen Sondheim's musical of the same name, which was one of Tim Burton's favorite musicals, and he really appreciated that take on the story, and so that's why he decided to adapt it for the screen. For people who want to know what a penny dreadful is, Kat is also going to go into it, but I'm going to dive a little bit as well in relation to like film as well. But a penny dreadful is a pejorative term for this form of literature that was cheap, entertaining serial literature that sold for a penny each. Despite their derogatory name, the books were quite popular due to their lurid, sensational subject matter. They generally told stories of murder and suspense. They were thrillers and really, like, absurd, too. We briefly covered Penny Dreadfuls in our Mary Shelley episode, so you can check that out to get a little more detail on them and, some of the famous stories that came from there. They were honestly, like, secretly desired, but in the public eye, they were scrutinized for their excessive violence and abuse, like abusive imagery, and just usually towards women or the underprivileged. Similar to Video Nasties, they quickly became cult favorites and have had a large impact on the horror genre, just from their nature of being, like, kind of pushing the envelope on a lot of things and just coming up against boundaries and just being like, whatever, we're gonna do what we want. The original text is violent and unnerving, and it plays into the public sphere at the time. Though it's sensational, the themes expressed in the story evolve beyond gore and guts for fun, but instead peels away layers of the society to reveal the fears underneath. Just like most Penny Dreadfuls, String of Pearls / Sweeney Todd, it featured murder and deceptions, but also featured those societal fears at the forefront. Some of those fears being, one, cannibalism. So the act of eating your own kind is pretty terrifying, especially when it's unintentional. That's one of the threads in which zombies are terrifying. There's, like, loss of individuality, representation of capitalism, all kinds of things. But it's also just on the bare minimum is that you're going around, you're eating your neighbors and your loved ones. So that's, like, horror in itself. And so specifically unintentional eating of humans can really devastate you. I think of, like, a specific scene in the Hannibal TV show where that fact is revealed, and it was, like, devastating for the people who are just like, I just ate a people. It could really get to you. especially because it's not intentional. Like, you're not going out looking to do this. It's like a breach of trust, and it's disgusting. Like, I can't imagine. I don't eat meat, so I wouldn't. I'm not gonna accidentally eat any people, but I imagine it would be bad. But this theme really reminded me of this short pamphlet that I read in school some time ago. I can't even tell you when. I think it was elementary school, called A Modest Proposal for Preventing the Children of Poor People from Being a Burden to Their Parents or Country and for Making Them Beneficial to the Public. Also known as A Modest Proposal by Jonathan Swift, which is incredibly satirical and suggests that the way to fix the issues of the poor is to simply have them sell off their children as food for the rich. Problem solved. So many problems solved just with that. The proposal features many ways in which a child can be prepared. An excerpt says, "A young healthy child well nursed is, at a year old, a most delicious, nourishing, and wholesome food, whether stewed, roasted, baked, or boiled, and I make no doubt it will equally serve in a fricasse or a ragout." And thanks to the ever helpful Wikipedia, you can pry this resource from my cold dead hands, there is some more information on the piece I found there because it's been a very long time since I read it. And also I was like a child, like a whole child. So though it stuck with me just throughout my history with like, because it was so preposterous. And I remember it being a critique, like that this was like one of the first instances of satire for me as like a young person, to use that as a tool to like be like, look at how terrible the world is. And here's like our preposterous thing. A lot of the themes did seem to like just over my head because I didn't really get it. I was too young. So thank you, Wikipedia. They say, "A Modest Proposal also targets the calculating way people perceive the poor in designing their projects." These were projects that were like thrown together as potential sources of progression to like help with poor people, and they were all just like completely ignorant of what the reality was of what people were going through. It's essentially like a let them eat cake situation where it's like you don't understand like like Marie. That's not the solution. You're completely missing the point here because you're just so disconnected. So Swift is making this whole conversation about how ill-advised these projects were and how honestly insulting some of them were just from lack of information. And so Wikipedia goes on to say, "The pamphlet targets reformers who regard people as commodities." In the piece, Swift adopts the technique of a political arithmetician to show the utter ridiculousness of trying to prove any proposal with dispassionate statistics. So just like if you just essentially make people into numbers, or just like there's no names, they're not people anymore, they're just a thing that we got to solve, you lose all the ability to actually solve that problem. So also thanks to SparkNotes, which saved me in school and life, I found kind of like a Swift's proposal for dummies, where it says, "Children of the poor could be sold into a meat market at the age of 1, he argues, thus combating overpopulation and unemployment, sparing families the expense of childbearing while providing them with a little extra income, improving the culinary experience of the wealthy, and contributing to the overall economic well-being of the nation." In A Modest Proposal, Swift vents his mounting aggravation at the ineptitude of Ireland's politicians, the hypocrisy of the wealthy, the tyranny of the English, and the squalor and degradation in which he sees so many Irish people living. Which sounded very similar to me because I was like, there's a reason why I'm doing this. Was like in 1750, so way before this Penny Dreadful came out, but it's clear that those same issues are there, and that people are suffering, and the elite class are ignorant to that suffering, and so there's this like, this is how we fix it. So I just thought it was like kind of funny that both of their answers, even though like are obviously wrong, and one being very satirical, the other one just being like kind of funny, was to eat people. Yeah. Like it helps with overpopulation.
Yeah, there's positives,
to the advancement of our culinary arts, like all ridiculous. So, to me, it was like, how else can we grab the attention of our fellow suffering neighbors than through hysterically absurd and sensational gore?
Mm-hmm.
That's like our whole show. It's like we use gore and sensationalism as a tool to teach people about, cultural pains. And that's exactly what A Modest Proposal was doing, as well as, honestly, Sweeney Todd. There's also the theme of industrialization and classism, which kind of go hand in hand because they only help each other. The Penny Dreadful was published in 1840s Britain in the midst of the Industrial Revolution for them. The character Sweeney Todd owns a barbershop in the middle of one of the busiest industrial centers of the growing city of London. And with the booming industry, crime rates also rose as the oppressive nature of accelerated industry caused much strain on the lower income citizens, which Kat has talked at length about on our show in many different episodes. Mrs. Lovett has this concern for her pie shop, which suffers from lack of good quality meat. Fresh meat is expensive and rare, resulting in her trying to kill cats, which she assumes her competitor is already doing. And she feeds them to her customers, and even that doesn't help. Benjamin Barker, his original personality, is wrongfully accused and imprisoned after the well-to-do and overly powerful judge abuses his power.
Yeah.
So it's like there's a lot. It's hard to not be like, this is what that's about. Like specifically, Sweeney Todd. Because the Penny Dreadful is a little different. So in String of Pearls, there's a Colonel Jeffrey who, along with Joanna of the yellow hair, is investigating the disappearance of a sailor named Lieutenant Thornhill. Thornhill was supposed to gift Joanna a string of pearls given by her lover Mark, who is suspected to be lost at sea. Joanna goes undercover dressed as a boy. We see this in the film a little bit. Eventually, the truth comes to light that Todd's been killing folks and Mrs. Love has been cooking them into pies. And it turns out that Mark, the missing husband or the suitor, has been imprisoned in the bake shop and forced to cook the people. And when the truth is revealed, he proclaims, "Ladies and gentlemen, I fear that what I'm going to say will spoil your appetites. But the truth is beautiful at all times, and I have to state that Mrs. Lovett's pies are made of human flesh." This is the first Soylent Green is people. So, again, another example of like, why don't we just eat people? It has so much problems. And it's, I would say that's a pretty different premise from what we're given in Sondheim's interpretation of this film, and this film. But like, there's still the basics in there. I think it's just gone a step forward into really digging into those themes, especially since Penny Dreadfuls were rather short, and were made to be more sensational than educational. So it was like, we took the meaty bits, the human meaty bits, and we made them into a film. So now let's jump into the film specifically. That whole time, just not even talking about the film. It wasn't marketed as a musical, which is a very odd decision, considering that the play, and I believe the film as well, is 80% sung. like not as much as Repo, which was like 5% spoken word. This one at least has like 20% spoken word, but it was a lot of like, why speak when we can sing? So it's a really weird omission to not like
tell anyone that that's happening.
Yeah, and it kind of like had. Some people walked out and some people were really disappointed. It also was kind of sad because there's a lot of people who love musicals, and at the time, like, Chicago was doing really well. It's like, why not? Why not do that? There's a lot of reasoning behind it. I don't think it's really good, like a good reason, so I'm not even getting into it. But it wasn't. Anyway, Sweeney Todd, the film, what it was adapted from, follows the story of Benjamin Barker, who turns into Sweeney Todd, which is a far more terrifying name, that Sweeney.
So scary.
Like, Todd, Mr. Todd. It was like, Barker is kind of scarier. Although Ben Barker kind of sounds, that's just a superhero's name.
Yeah.
Like Peter Parker.
Yeah, that's true.
Anyway, he's seeking revenge for his wrongful conviction, the alleged death of his wife, and abduction of his daughter with the yellow hair, Joanna. And it's called Blonde, Todd. Anthony and Todd. It's Blonde. That's what it's called. After returning to the gloomy and suffocating smog-ridden city of London, this dystopian, in the midst of Industrial Revolution city, it looks like a potential for new life, but also like a desolate underworld of hatred and shame. Depends on who's looking.
Yeah.
Depends who's looking at it. And it does a really great, like, it when you get this first opening of, like they're at sea and the waves are crashing and it's just dark. And, like, Anthony's like, it's London, and he's like all hopeful, and it's like doom and gloom, and then you just like pan over to Sweeney Todd, and he just looks like a corpse reanimated, and he says, at the top of the holes sit a privileged few, making mock of the vermin in the lower zoo, turning beauty to filth and greed. I too have sailed the world and seen its wonders, for the cruelty of men is as wondrous as Peru, but there's no place like London. And he's like, great back bit. He's just like totally, he's like just straight up dissing London. Like, he's just roasting it. And then, like, as he's going there. And poor Anthony's like, I thought it would be nice.
Yeah.
The world hasn't ruined me yet, so I'm still hopeful. And Sweeney's like, let me teach you real quick.
Yeah.
So Todd returns to his old home, which was once warm and full of love, with his wife and infant daughter, and now is a decrepit building. And he meets Mrs. Lovett, who does indeed love it. She loves him a lot. She later becomes his partner in crime, helping him bake people into pies, as it is.
Mm-hmm.
And has one of my favorite songs, where she's like, seems an awful waste. Such a nice plump frame. What's his name has. Nor it can't be traced. Business needs a lift. Debts to be erased. I think of it as thrift, as a gift, if you get my drift. Seems an awful waste. I mean, with the price of meat, what it is, when you get it, if you get it. And he's like, ah! She's like, good, you got it. And then they're just talking about all the different ways, like all the different tastes of people outside the window. Like, try the priest. That's the name of that song. Mm-hmm. Do you have poet? So good, so good. I thought that was really funny for him to just be like, oh, right.
Yeah, cannibalism.
Did you get it? Meanwhile, the hopeful Anthony, who looked forward to the beauty of London, so disappointing, has fallen in love with a yellow-haired girl who's entrapped in the judge's house. And we've just learned that Turpin, the judge, stole Joanna as an infant, and soon it is explained that he wants to marry her. Big ew. Big ew. And he's like, the whole scene is just like, and when I asked her, surprisingly, she said no.
Yeah, she wasn't like thrilled about marrying this whole man.
That's
and
like,
she's like 15.
Her dad.
Yeah, right? Like, what?
Like, he raised her from an infant.
It's super bizarre. Like, I guess it's
so gross.
It's gross more than it's bizarre.
Like, why are you like this?
Yeah. Like, Snape, why?
Yeah, exactly. So Anthony decides to steal Joanna, and I would have went with rescue, but this is a dreadful, and it was called a romance at the time, so perhaps the lyrics, though unsettling, can also be seen as sweet. This is the one that I had on my iPod that I remember, and it also comes through. One of the things about this musical that's so awesome is, like, there's a lot that went into it. Actually, a very large, like, musical, like the... I'm totally blanking on what they're called. No, like the performers. They had a lot of them. They had big bands, whatever it would be called.
Orchestra.
And they had like orchestra. They had like 6 violinists, and it was just like intense. Like, and because the film is mostly singing, there's a lot of like the blends of like songs being sung along each other and reprises all throughout of like the same song, similar to what we saw in Phantom of the Opera. Like, it's pretty standard for being authentic in that way, and did it in a way that was not, it didn't feel forced or wrong. Like, it felt really well. So Joanne, this one comes through, there's like a song where like Sweeney Todd is singing something sad, and he's singing about Joanna still. And he sings, "I'll steal you, Joanna, I'll steal you. Do they think that walls can hide you? Even now I'm at your window. I'm in the dark beside you." Like, it's, dude, buried sweetly in your yellow hair. And he makes it sound like it's really nice, and it's not, because that's creepy. And it made me think of the song by Clay Aiken, which is you know, a time. He had a song which is essentially about him like watching a woman from afar, and you know, like a fly on the wall, like he could see her all the time.
Oh yeah, I do remember that song.
There was also another one that I can't remember, but there was like some song where it was like that, and my mom really liked it, and she was like, "Get me the CD." I was like, "Do you know what this song is saying?"
Yeah.
This song is about stalking a woman. Like, let's think about this, Mom. Let's put on our media analysis earphones and think about the lyrics of this song. And she was like, "No, I just want this CD, thank you." Which is just my life. Anyway, Then Snape, Judge Turpin, there he goes, pining after a woman who isn't his, and being really problematic about it.
Yeah.
Like, she belongs to me just because, like, sir.
Yeah.
It sounds about white. Anyway, he finds out about it and rushes Joanna off to a mental institution that's really just a storage facility for women who don't behave, as was appropriate of the time.
Yep.
Like, oh, you're being ornery, you're not just just doing what society says you should, like marrying this old man. So we gotta send you away and use your beautiful yellow hair that everyone wants to bury into as a wig for judges. Yeah. Anyway, all that seems minimal when we confront the horrors of the fact that Mr. Todd this whole time is butchering instead of barbering.
Yep.
And it's his fellow poor folk mostly. Like, that was I was like, one, is he ever not killing people? And there was there's like a montage where there's like one person who doesn't kill because his wife and kid were there, but I was like, he can't be killing everybody.
Yeah, otherwise, like, how make business. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, part of me is like, is he being strategic about it so that like he's killing the right people? But I don't think that's the case. He's just killing for killing's sake because he's bad. He's a bad guy. Mrs. Lovett is feeding them right back into society by way of meat pie. Mm-hmm. Just helping society in the ways that they do. It's certainly horrific, and the film and musical has made such an impact on the musical world that it's been a boom for horror musicals. Like, it was like, oh, this is a really great musical, and so great that Tim Burton wants to make a film out of it. Like, that's crazy. And it just started, it showed that, like, horror specifically is a great, like, mix for musicals specifically, which is like similar to what our guest Angelina was saying, where it's both of them are representing this like intense and like heightens version of emotions. Like, both of them are playing on those. So like with musicals, like, you're singing your heart out. With horror, you're screaming your heart out. So it's a really natural blend, especially because both of them often are seeking to comment and critique the world around them as well, using entertainment to do that. So totally makes sense that this is a great blend, but it took something like this to do that. There's like light all up. I'm gonna go over here now. So because of that, there are like musical stage productions booming. So there's anything from Evil Dead, the musical, that's real. Yeah, I believe it. Evil Dead musical to Beetlejuice. Yeah, are being made into musicals, and honestly, I love that. I think that's so cool. This film is very grungy and dirty, full of dread, and phenomenal music. Like, it is quite like, it's not obviously K-12 because that was made to be just music, right? But it is really listenable even still, and like I said, a lot of production value went into just creating the songs and the production of it. Like, it's like a full-on production, like music, like it's just like so it's great to enjoy just that, but there are some humorous parts amidst the dread and forlorn scenes, like when Mrs. Lovett has her dream sequence for the future, and it featured her being really happy in all these different like scenarios, and Sweeney Todd's just like doom and gloom the entire time, like it doesn't ever change his face. He's just like, yeah, okay, whatever, lady. Make them into pies. I very clearly don't love you. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But overall, it's a decently good time. Though I do imagine that the play musical is even more phenomenal, and I would love to see it because I think it would be really fun. And if anything, this series has just made me feel like I really, really want to see more of those, like just see more musicals, like horror musicals specifically. Like we were in New York for Comic-Con and I saw a billboards, ridiculous, of Little Shop of Horrors.
Yeah.
And I was like, I want to go see that. That's fun. So I think this would probably be really fun to watch, like in person, and hear the music there and the drama, and to see like the contraption of the chair and how they get to the bottom and stuff. Like I think that
I've heard it's pretty good. Like it's pretty cool. I've never seen it myself, like in terms of like on Broadway or anything, or like outside of, I think I saw the musical movie version in school because I was in shows and they were like, you need to watch musicals that are movie now. Any movie that exists that's also a musical, you get to like watch that, and that's fun. Yeah, this one was really fun. Like, it was ridiculous. I think it definitely shows society. I totally agree with you on what you're saying, Gabe. Like, and it's like, yeah, no, the stuff's bad. I will say at the beginning, I was like, I get it, dude. People do suck. Like, I don't think we should turn them into pies.
No.
Or murder them, even.
And not like, and it's not even the right people to be doing that too. Like, I get it.
Yeah. And it's funny because he had the whole song where he was like, with my favorite lyrics in it, but when he was like going into it, he's like, everyone deserves to die. I deserve to die. That would be sweet release. We all want that. And it's like, not everyone, like there's the people who don't know. And I think even the ones who do know, who like still find hope, who are like, I don't want to like die though. Like,
death is not the answer.
Yeah.
It's definitely like stripped of power.
Yeah.
For sure. And maybe like, you know, that we need a different way to handle that. But yeah, not making them into pies. Like, I understand, but it's definitely like that. Like, this is an extreme answer to many problems, but very obviously not the answer. And it sucks because it's like the answers that would be better serving and would be not as evil are just inaccessible for these people. Like, they can't do that. They can't overturn like this judge. Like, that judge has power over them. They can't get access to meat in a better way. Like, this is really the only answer.
You're taking it out on the wrong people. 100%. And that judge, like, honestly, he sentenced that whole child. I don't even know what he's like. I don't even know what he did. He just, he deserves it. It's like, ultimately, aren't they kind of doing the same thing? Just like with different energy behind
I want something, so because like, I mean, honestly, Sweeney Todd is acting as judge, jury, executioner, right? He's like dubbing everyone as, worthy of death, and that the judge was also doing that, except it wasn't so blanket, right? It was because he didn't sentence that entire child and he's like, I hope he did it, or actually I don't really care.
He was literally like, it's a Monday,
that part to be like, this guy's evil. He deserves it.
Yeah, and I guess it's like kind of looking at any radical height, like one end thing. It's like you think you're doing a good thing. Sometimes it's not actually the good thing. Sometimes it's actually damaging. And it's like, I get that. Like, it seemed like it was like, I hate rich people. I want them to die. Like, and then he was like, okay, we're going to murder everybody. Because, might as well. Everyone's trash. And then the judge's doing the same thing. So
Yeah. And Mrs. Lovett's like, maybe we should be strategical.
Yeah.
Like, she was like kind of a voice of reason, even though she was like, let's turn people into pies. But she was very much just like, but certain people. Like, let's be, you know, like, we're going to do the priest because he's probably sketchy, you know?
Yeah.
Like, we're not going to do this person because they're hard up as well. And don't kill my little child that I've adopted.
Yeah. I feel like team murder sets you up for that, though. Because it's like, if you're going to find someone who's, like, down for murder, they may be a little more down than you. And that's a risk. That's a risk.
There's been many historical couples that murder. There's been many of them. They're real. They're out there.
Yeah, I mean, I believe it, but I just feel like at least a tiny bit of it is like, one is like, that's not a bad idea, yeah. And then they realize a line has been crossed, but then they don't know how to, like, broach that subject because they're very aware that the murder is taking place. So they could also be murdered. So it's like, geez.
Yeah, right? Like,
I thought this was going to be a
pretty
fun
easy.
time. It's not.
Who saw that coming? Literally everyone. Literally everyone. She's
Maybe
like,
the guy I was
couldn't
murdering
possibly
with.
Killed me.
Yeah,
she
ain't that
clearly
great?
wasn't all like she wasn't completely in control of her faculties at that point,
Yeah.
you know, she was not thinking logically.
And also, like, thinking about the time period, it's not necessarily a good time for women in that, like, they didn't exactly.
And she's a widow.
Yeah.
She's got
So it's a rock and a hard place at that point.